Good morning. Today is our last live class. We will be wrapping up the course this week with the final exam. So, hold on one second. I'm going to move to a new room. There, now I'm not echoing as bad. So, today we are wrapping up the course with the final exam review. Your project was due last night, so those grades should be showing up in Blackboard now. And then the chapter 12 homework was due on Friday. So the only thing left now is the final exam stuff. So down here in today's class, you should watch the introduction video and complete this attendance assignment in Connect. This is what will count as your attendance for today. I think it's maybe 20 multiple choice questions. It's another great way to review for the final exam. And then this introduction video. And then lastly, work on this final exam review. While I tell you that the final exam review does not add points to your final exam score, I can't stress enough to you that you should practice with the final exam review. The questions and types of problems and material that's on that review are very, very good clues as to what to expect on the actual final exam. The final exam does open at 11 o'clock a.m. today, and it will be due by 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday. You will have 125 minutes to complete the exam. Once you open it, you may not save and close it, and it is comprehensive of all the chapters that we've covered in class. Chapters 1 through 12, excluding chapter 9. So do make sure to get that in and get it completed. As you know, if you don't remember, the final exam does count as 10% of your grade. So it is important that you do well on the final exam. Also, the grade confirmation. If you have not yet completed the grade confirmation, please go in and do that. The absolute last date you can do that is Tuesday, tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. That way, when the final exam is done on Wednesday, when I get up on Thursday morning, I can go ahead and finalize grades and get those submitted to the college so that you can see those as soon as possible. I know I'm ready to wrap up this semester. I'm sure you guys are too. So make sure to get those grade confirmations in by tomorrow night. You should have a grade for everything in Blackboard now. So make sure to check that as well. So I'm just going to go through and remind you guys kind of what we talked about this semester. It's been a long semester. Chapter 1, we start out by discussing financial accounting. We talked about how financial accounting is the measurement of activities and the communication of these measurements to investors and creditors. We talked about historical perspective of accounting standards and the role of the auditor and careers in accounting. So chapter 1 just kind of got you started. We talked about GAAP. We talked about the decision-making process, the conceptual framework, all of that. Then in chapter 2, we moved on to the accounting cycle during the period. We talked about how the accounting equation and how to record transactions using debits and credits. And that was the major and T accounts, trial balances, things like that. Chapter 3 was the end of the period with adjusting journal entries. So we talked about how to record the adjusting journal entries for the 4 different types, how to prepare an adjusted trial balance, prepare financial statements from the adjusted trial balance, and how to record closing entries and a post-closing trial balance. So make sure that you review back on those closing entries. I know a lot of you struggled with that back in chapter 3, and we haven't done a lot with it since then. So I highly suggest that you go back and look over the closing entries. Chapter 4, we moved on to looking at different things on the balance sheet and income statement in depth. We started with cash in chapter 4. We talked about accounting scandals and SOX, Sarbanes-Oxley. We talked about internal control, cash and cash equivalents, and then the big thing that you had to learn how to do was a bank reconciliation. So make sure that you're comfortable doing a bank reconciliation, and then understanding how to account for employee purchases. Chapter 5 was accounts receivable and sales. This is discussing net revenues with sales discounts, sales returns, and sales allowances, as well as we talked about bad debts and the allowance for bad debts, and how to record the allowance, how to write off accounts that when you know they become uncollectible, as well as a little bit of talking about notes receivable and interest revenue. Chapter 6 is inventory and cost of goods sold. So we talked about the different inventory types, and this was the first chapter that we did in this new transitioned classroom. We talked about cost of goods sold as the expense on the income statement, and then the different methods for determining cost of goods sold: FIFO, LIFO, weighted average, specific identification. And we also talked about applying the lower of cost or market value to inventories. Chapter 7, we moved on to long-term assets, property, plant, and equipment. We talked about how to record depreciation on property, plant, and equipment. We talked about how to dispose of long-term assets. We talked about intangible assets, patents, copyrights, trademarks, things like that. And covered some ratios that kind of like we had been in previous chapters. Chapter 8 is current liabilities. That was the shortest chapter in the book, except we shortened 12. But 8, we talked about distinguishing between current and long-term liabilities, how to account for notes payable and interest expense, especially if you're having to accrue it at the end of the year. Accounting for employee and employer payroll liabilities was the big part of the new stuff in this chapter. Remember, you've got your employee expenses and your employer match of FICA. Employers only pay FUTA and SUTA, things like that. And then we talked about how to account for other current liabilities, such as gift cards and sales taxes. We skipped chapter 9 and went on into chapter 10, which was the stockholders' equity chapter. And we discussed the corporate form of ownership and recording the issuance of common stock at par value. And then if there is no par, so then you get that additional paid-in capital account. Talked about preferred stock and how to issue preferred stock. Treasury stock, when a company buys back its own stock. And then if we were to resell it. Cash dividends, stock dividends, and then the stockholders' equity section, the balance sheet and statement of stockholders' equity. We also discussed BAT. Don't forget that multi-step income statement and the classified balance sheet as well. And then chapter 11 is the statement of cash flows. That was that fourth and final financial statement that we prepared. So the first one that we prepared, of course, is the income statement, because you need the net income to flow into the statement of stockholders' equity. Then you prepare the statement of stockholders' equity, and at the bottom, when you have those ending balances, you use those to prepare your balance sheet. Once you've prepared your balance sheet, you're then able to prepare your statement of your cash flow statement, because you know that ending cash balance, and you can also look back at the other financial statements for the information you need to prepare the different sections of the statement of cash flows. Remember, we're doing the statement of cash flows, the operating activity section, using the indirect method. We don't even worry about the direct method. And then you got the investing and the financing activities section. And then lastly, in the last chapter, which is chapter 12, we talked about financial statement analysis. We talked about how to perform a vertical analysis and a horizontal analysis. So that's the high points of everything that we covered in this class. Like I said, the final exam is comprehensive, so make sure that you're comfortable with all of that information. Summer registration is still open. There's still some spots in some classes for summer 10-week and 8-week classes, so take a look at that and get registered for summer classes. I suggest you take, even if you just take one, you're getting a head start on the fall and your degree. And it's a great thing to do. And then fall is open. Get registered now for fall semester so that you can get spots in the classes that you need before they get filled up. Don't wait till August to get registered. Go ahead and register now for fall classes. If you are registered for classes, then you're good to go. But if you have any questions, let me know. It's been a great semester, guys. I'm sorry that things have happened the way they do and that we're not here together to finish up this class. But thank you guys so much for sticking with me and with this class and working so hard through these tough times that we're in. I know that we'll persevere and we'll get through it, but if there's anything that I can do to help you, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Even if you're not in my class anymore going forward, you can still email me with any concerns you have or just somebody to listen to. I'm here for you. So I hope you guys have a wonderful summer. Good luck on the final exam, and I hope to see you guys again in one of my future classes.